Well, welcome back, everyone, to Speeding Through History. This will be episode 3, and we're once again joined by Don Gamble. Now, last time we did this, we started talking about the tracks in the area, and specifically the tracks that Don raced on. Don, you sent me a list a couple of weeks ago of the tracks you raced on. You sent me some more talking points regarding some of those tracks that we already covered a handful of them, but boy, there are a lot more. As I said last week, looks like you raced at a lot more tracks than you didn't race at. You competed at Challenger, Clinton, Greater Pitt, Depot Park, Heidelberg, just so many more. So we went alphabetically. Let's jump right back into where we were. How about Hickory? Now, what was Hickory? Where was Hickory?
Hickory was a track over in the Newcastle area, and Vern Hawley was running the track, and it had shifted from the asphalt to dirt to asphalt, back and forth. And when I was there, it was dirt, and I was driving a car that Rick Robinson used to lend me for the senior series. Had never been there before, and we were leading the feature about 4 or 5 laps to go, and I broke a valve spring, and I had to pull in. And the only saving grace was when we got parked in there. I heard a couple fans talk, and they said, "That guy's a promoter, but boy, can he drive!" And that made my day. But we had to pull out because of the valve spring.
So a little more about Hickory up in the Newcastle area. I might have missed it. Big track, small track.
Small track, small quarter mile.
Okay, a lot more quarter miles around back in the day than big half miles.
Yes. Yeah, they were very popular, and for many years that was the only option.
So your real option, back in the day would have been Heidelberg, the big half mile, right?
Correct.
Any
But
other half miles?
they didn't run the half mile all the time. They ran the quarter mile more often than not. But
Really?
then in later years, it was all the half mile.
So, okay, again, we're going alphabetically. That's Hickory. Uh, One with a storied history. We may have touched on this before. The Latrobe Speedway. Now, Latrobe has a history of being in a couple of different places. Am I right on that? Let's go back
Yes,
to that.
the original Latrobe Speedway was in the town of Latrobe, and it was on the property owned by the water company. And back then, a lot of the superstars of local racing raced at the small Latrobe Speedway. Then, when they couldn't use that anymore, Paul Schmucker built what it's Latrobe, but everybody that you talk to knows what Schmucker's is, and they built the Schmucker Speedway there, and then the other. They still have reunions at the what's left of the original Latrobe Speedway, and couple of the brothers, Shirey brothers, they just do a great job with that every year. And the only unfortunate thing is the thing I had to deal with when we were having the reunions down at Heidelberg is we're losing too many of the old timers.
So Paul Schmucker opened it. Was it ever really called Schmucker Speedway, or was that just a
Yes,
nickname it got?
no, it was always called Schmucker Speedway.
And
Yeah,
currently, it is at the location, what, down 981, kind of past the airport, right? South of the airport, right?
right, real close to the airport. And then as it changed hands, somewhere along the line, one of the owners or people leasing the track decided to call it Latrobe Speedway. Probably had a nicer sound to it, you know?
Sure. So one of the tracks I recall going to as a kid, my dad took my brother there. I think it was called Green Valley at one point, and that would be the North Hills Speedway. Is that correct?
Yes, when it was built, Green Valley, actually, Buddy O'Connor had a lot to do with building it. And at one point in time, my neighbor in Monroeville was on Buddy's pit crew. And he said, in reality, the railroad supplied all the railroad ties for the walls. Now
Wow.
they didn't know that they were supplying them, but that's where all the railroad ties came. And then later on, when Don Hafner took it over, they named it North Hills Raceway.
Another quarter mile or a bigger track?
No, quarter mile.
Another quarter mile. Okay, and
but a nice track, smooth, good racing all the time.
I know the people that race there, and Deke Scott's the first one comes to mind. Of course, he lived just up the road in Wexford. That was sort of his home track, and I know a lot of people have fond memories of North Hills. I don't remember a lot about it. It wasn't like I was a small child or anything. I just don't recall. It closed, what, 70s sometime?
Yeah, I'm not sure when it closed, but that sounds about right in the 70s. Now, here's a little known fact. Okay, Herb Scott was a big name there, and he wanted to get Deke involved. So I believe it was a 57 Chevy. I don't know who owned it, but Deke started driving that. And once he proved that he was a good driver, then he little by little worked his way into the late models, had an outstanding career in the late models, and also some wins in the 88 modified that had Ed Lynch as a driver early on. So didn't matter where you put Deke, he was going to win. But I say most of his wins probably came in the late models.
And I believe you have a championship at North Hills. Is that correct?
Yeah, I want to say, I think it was 60, 68, or maybe it was 78. I should have wrote that down. But yeah, we won the track championship one year. Let me see in my notes if it's here. I don't know. Well, that's something I'll have to deal with. Oh
Sure.
no, I won in '78 the semi lake track championship.
So
Yeah,
we touched on this before. 78, you won the semi-lates. I know we touched on the business of how these tracks have so many different divisions now. Just as a sidebar, we're talking about late 70s now. Had that trend started by then, where we had more than two divisions, or was North Hills a two-division track only?
as far as I remember, it was two divisions. Now they also had figure eights, but they didn't have them on the regular race night, or if they did, I don't remember.
Seem to recall it was an odd sort of a thing that North Hills was not on the weekend. It was a Thursday night track. Is that correct?
And they did that because then they didn't have to compete with all the other tracks.
Right. Good move.
Yeah.
So another track that's out there that is still there and has also gone through couple of different lifetimes of its own is Jennerstown Speedway. Jennerstown, I believe, has always existed on the property it's on right now. Dirt track long time ago. I don't recall if it's changed sizes over time. Asphalt in the early 90s. What about Jennerstown? Long history there, right?
Right. Well, we raced there on the dirt and had moderate success there. It's the same size that it always was. And the reason it got paved, Piney Lasky just got tired of preparing a dirt track. And he told me one time when I was talking to him, he said, I'm getting too old for this stuff. I want to fix it. So all I have to do is go out and sweep it off with the track sweeper. Piney was an amazing man, and some of the things he did for racing. He came up in that era, like in the 60s. Okay, Bill Potts built Marion Center. Don Martin built Lernerville. Lasky built Jennerstown. And they were sort of like the pioneers of racing in this area.
Once again, we talked about the drivers that were the pioneers, but we owe a lot to these promoters too. I think before you and I wrap this up in however many weeks it takes to exhaust your memories here, we need to dedicate a show just to the promoters because we have been treated down through history in Western Pennsylvania and beyond to some real characters and some real serious honest to God, gift to God type promoters. I know Martin is one of them for sure, and we're going to talk about him. In fact, I want to jump to Lernerville next. Obviously, Lernerville, another one. See if I have my dates right again. 67, 68. It opened up.
I
Obviously, Don Martin. Let us know about Lernerville, Don.
Yeah, that's when it opened up, and what an excellent track for well, still for so many years, just top notch racing. Now, there's a track that defies the odds because they have four divisions: late model sprints, modifieds, and they were claimers, and now they're call them what you want, semi lates, pro stocks, whatever. But very successful with all four divisions. And I think early on, Lernerville was competing with Butler Speedway, which was where the Butler High School is. And Don didn't think that was a good idea, so he bought the lease and shut it down. And then everything was Friday night at Lernerville.
And for the most part, now maybe there's have been a small change, but Friday night Lernerville's the only game in town, really. Is that still pretty much holds true around here, right?
Right. Now that increased in size 3 times. It was
From
a
what to
small,
what? Go ahead.
it was a quarter mile, and then it was a 3/8, and then it became a half. But here's the story there, which it almost didn't happen. Don Martin owned a property where if you were in the grandstands and you were looking at the track and you went from turn 1 and 2, which he didn't own the property adjacent to that, and turn 3 and 4, he didn't own that property. So Carol Gamble said to him, Don, you got to figure something out here because if someone else gets that property, you got a big problem. So I think the first one, he bought the property where 3 and 4 is, and that's where they put the ball fields in, and it was really nice. Well, the other part he was leasing, and he was happy with the guy that was leasing it to him. And again, Carol said that could change overnight. You need to buy that. And then he eventually bought the property adjacent to turn 1 and 2, or Lernerville would have had to stay real small, and it wouldn't have been a good idea.
So there really isn't a Lernerville, Pennsylvania, I don't think. The name came from an amusement park it had been. Is that
Yes,
correct?
yes, there was, and it was called Lerner, the amusement park. And actually, if you're sitting in the grandstands, the park would have went from the grandstands straight across and out to where the back straightaway is. But prior to that, it was a dump and a pig farm
Oh my goodness.
uh, before it became Lerner Amusement Park. And then eventually it evolved. And when Don built the Speedway, everything, instead of being perpendicular to the back straightaway, it was then parallel to the back where the back straightaway is now.
So for the fans who've never been beyond the grandstand at Lernerville, Lernerville has the great mystery of where do the cars go when they go down off the backstretch? Because every
Well,
other track around has a wall except Lernerville, and when they go over, they're gone.
well, I've been over there many times, and now the Thompson family's making some changes, and I think they have a road down there, so it's not like it was in the heyday when Martin had it. But one night I went over there, and we broke a wheel, and we couldn't find it. And after the races, we're down there looking for it. We couldn't find it, and for us, tire and wheel and stuff and rim, it was to us it was a lot of money. So we went the next day, and we found the tire up in a tree.
Like,
Well, obviously we couldn't see it in the dark, so we saved our wheel and tire. But some of the stories there now, a fellow who is now a really good friend of mine is Banker Beach, and we were fighting for the point lead. And 3 weeks in a row, he either ran into me, ran me over the hill, spun me out, whatever. And so I had an attitude. Our team was Gamble Hazley Race Team, and I went down while he was in the car and I punched him. Bad move. Former Marine, hard as a rock. He gets out of the car and he put a shiner on my eye. It looked like a chocolate donut. But when Ronnie Hazley come up over the hill, he said, if they don't have one of their shirts on, hit them. They hit the ambulance driver. They hit the tow truck driver. They hit everybody that didn't have one of our shirts on. Martin says to me, we got to fix this. And I said, well, how about next week you get a keg of beer and we'll just everybody sit down and talk it out. And we did. We got it all sorted out. But then to even go a step further, I asked Banker and his wife and his brother Jerry and his wife to come to my house in Monroeville for like a sit-down dinner, beer, whatever. Let's fix this all up. And when they got there, they said, we weren't sure if we should have came here. We thought we were going to get our ass kicked when we showed up. But many, many years later, we're still friends. As a matter of fact, a couple of years ago, I was down in Daytona, and they have a parade of all these race cars. And I thought, I'm going to have to look up Banker if I can find him. Well, I set up my lawn chair, and the guy beside me sets his up, and he says, "This is pretty neat." And it was
Oh my
Banker
goodness.
Beach. So we had a good session there, and we went to one of the local seafood restaurants, and just was very, very nice. Now, the name that might sound familiar because Jerry Beach, his brother, is the guy that's building all the cars now.
Greg Beach.
Greg Beach is his
Okay.
son.
Gotcha.
Yeah. Now, Greg wasn't real involved in it then. He was probably too young then. But as he evolved into, I think it's called Anarchy
That's
Customs,
correct.
he's helping a lot of people, and he is really smart.
He's got a lot of cars out there. That's for sure.
Yeah.
So I don't want to leave Lernerville without doing this. As I said, we're going to give you some homework here before too long about we want to dedicate an episode of this to promoters. But I can't let Lernerville go by without letting you talk about Helen Martin, who we just lost.
An amazing lady. Helen, uh, she was the support that Don needed because sometimes he would do things that maybe weren't the smartest things possible. Like he liked to go to Vegas and gamble, and he'd take X number of dollars with him. I'm just guessing, but I think it was somewhere around 10 grand, and he'd go and gamble and have a good time. So he called Helen and said, "We're doing pretty good here. I'm having a good time." So he says, "And I'll let you know when I get back to, I guess it was Butler Airport. I'm not sure. I'll call you and you can come and pick me up." And he called her and said, uh, "Can you pay the cab driver? I don't have enough money to pay it myself."
Oh my.
But she was so supportive of Don and all the things he did, and just an amazing lady. And what they would do now at the time, uh, Carol was working there, and sometimes I'd race there, sometimes I'd work there. Eventually, became the pit steward there. But every Christmas, Don and Helen would come to the house with a turkey or a ham and $100 bill. They were very, very good to their employees. And one employee that really didn't do right by Don was Art Smiley. He quit in the middle of the week and he went to Latrobe because he was friends with Bucky Fleming. That's another story by itself. And Don says, "What are we going to do?" I said, "Well, I'll fill in until you find somebody." And I think I filled in for 2, maybe 3 years. I don't know. I don't remember how long I was there, but it was like a family, and everybody pitched in, and I'm sure there were a lot of people that worked there that would have worked there for nothing. As a matter of fact, Don said, "What I owe you?" I said, You don't owe me anything. I just want to help you out." Well, then he eventually started giving me a paycheck, even though I didn't ask him. But what a place! Now I don't know. You can maybe take this part out if it's not appropriate, but Dick Schwartzlander was the tech inspector. And like I said, if little kids are listening to this, you might want to turn it down. So he got a shirt made up, and I think the first one said "Official Dick," and I said, "Now you're going to have to get a different shirt." And so and maybe I got it backwards. And then the new shirt said "Dick Inspector." I said, "How about if we just get a name that just says Dick Schwartzman?"
Nice.
Okay. Well, one night he made a really, really bad call. And I took him over to the side and I said, "We're not going to fix this tonight, but don't ever do that again. You understand?" And he said, "Yeah." And he never did it again. But I had a lot of fun doing that. And one of the times I was the pit steward and it was an Enduro. And this fella, and Buddy O'Connor won it. And Buddy O'Connor was my childhood hero. So young kid comes up to me, he says, "I want to protest that O'Connor guy." I said, "Why?" He says, "He's a professional driver." I said, "The guy's like 75 years old. You want to protest him because he beat you?" He said, "Yeah." I said, "I got a better idea. I'm going to get you a brown paper bag and poke 2 holes in it for the eyes and put it over your head so you can get out of here before anybody hears what you want to do. The kid, he didn't know he was talking to the wrong guy.
I guess so.
Then another guy come up to me one time and he said, I want to protest so and so. I said, why? He says, well, because he's cheating. I said, well, how do you know? He says, because I'm cheating and I can't catch him.
That's perfect. Don, these are the kind of stories everybody is just absolutely eating up. Boy, just keep them coming. So that's Lernerville. Let's move on to another one, another track that's still running every Saturday night, and that's Marion Center. Marion
Well,
Center's got a pretty long history as well, right?
it has a pretty special part in my life. Quarter mile, very smooth, opened in 66, seated about 2,500 people. And I met Dennis Kane and Teddy Caccino there in 68, and they asked me to drive their car. Now, it took me a while to catch on because it was a 56 Ford with 58 Ford fenders. And I finally said, what's the story here? Well, it had a 427 in it, and that wasn't legal in a 56 Ford. So they converted it to a 56 slash 58 Ford. And we ran it there for 3 years, had a lot of success with it. And it was a good car. And he sold it to someone else. I can't remember the guy who also went on to win some races in it. Well, in 70, we're scheduled to I'm scheduled to drive their late model, and it was a 64 Fairlane, beautiful car. And I was in an accident and broke my left leg. So I said, well, that's the end of that. But these guys were really loyal. They said, if we put a hand clutch in there, which was a big long bar on the clutch, so I could put the clutch in and shift gears, would you be okay with that? And I said, yeah, I think I could do that. Now, picture this. You're coming around to start the race. It's a stick shift. Okay, I got to hold the steering wheel, hold the clutch, and put it in gear. But I kind of got the knack of doing that. And we had some success with that beautiful car, orange and white. How about this? It's orange and white, number 68. Now, that's a number that nobody ever uses. First night there with the late model, there's another orange and white 68. I mean, go figure. But the guy didn't stay around long, so we were good to go there. But I had my leg in a cast, and it went from where my belt would be all the way down to my foot. And what they would have to do was lift me into the car, which, thinking about it now, was not a smart thing to do. But
the issue is getting out of the car if there's a problem, right?
That's why it wasn't smart. So one night we're at Latrobe, and I come in and I said, Dennis, I can't get the motor to rev past 5,000 RPMs. And you needed to be about 6,500, somewhere in there. So I said, why don't you put somebody else in it? See what I'm doing wrong. So they put Frankie Court in. He had a little trouble shifting gears, putting in gear, and actually he could use his real foot. He didn't have to use the hand clutch. And he comes in, he said, Dennis, I can't get this car more than 5,000 RPMs. So they figured something's wrong. So they took the cover off the quick change and found out they had the gears in upside down.
Oh, no.
So they resolved that, and we did real well with that. Down at North Hills, when they put us in the helmet dash, I don't know, the track, the mud, whatever, we kind of owned the helmet dashes down there. But I'm still friends with Dennis 50, 60 years later. And that friendship is so valuable because I have a lot of good car owners. I got a lot of good friends, but I didn't have any of them for 60 years.
So I want to jump back real quick. We're going to get back into tracks. You mentioned more than a couple of times your childhood hero, Buddy O'Connor. If
Yes.
I'm not mistaken, relative of a former mayor, Bob O'Connor. Is that correct?
Right. And there's a story behind that. When Bob O'Connor was mayor, and if he hadn't passed away, he would have been the governor someday. He was smart. Okay. Well, we're donating a lot of stuff to the Heinz History Center Museum, a lot of Buddy stuff. And Bob knew that because he saw what I was taking down there. So none of it was showing up. And he called down there and talked to somebody and said, we're doing an awful lot of nice things for this museum, but I'm wondering if we should keep doing it because my uncle's stuff is not on display. Well, guess what? A week later, a lot of buddy's stuff was on display.
Nice.
So sometimes you have to push the right buttons.
That's exactly right. And knowing the right guy certainly helps.
Yeah. Well, now back to this Dennis Kane. He also worked for me at Motordrome. Now, I had a guy that when I took over Motordrome, we had to have a place for dirt tires. And couldn't leave them up at the track because people would have stolen them. So I made a deal with Butch Overly. I said, Butch, if I get a school bus, take all the seats out and put the tires in there, can we park it next to your house? Because it'd be safe next to his house. He said, fine. So I'd get down prior to the races and get the bus and bring it up. And they would let the guys go in there, measure tires, whatever. And Jeff Sugars ran, still friends with him, but not 60 years. He ran the tire machine. Well, we couldn't get the bead to seat itself on the front or on the rim. So Dennis comes in one day with this big round circle. It was stainless steel, and he bent it into a circle and had all these little holes in it, and it had an air jack plug so you could put air on there. He said, just tell Jeff to plug this into the air and hit the button. Well, as soon as you did that, tire would go right up and seat itself on the bead. And as far as I know, they used that until the track got paved. It was just one of the many things that Dennis did for. And what a craftsman he was. He worked at a company, I think in Irwin, called AirTech, and they could pretty much make anything. But
Nice.
I don't think it's there anymore because he retired and the management wasn't paying attention and whatever. If it's there, I'm sorry, but I don't think it is.
So you mentioned Motordrome. Go ahead and let's talk about Motordrome. Another one with a long storied history. Another one that, if I'm not mistaken, has been in a couple of places. Is that correct?
Yes, the original Motordrome, and I think that's how Dennis got interested, was in a town called Roughdale, and he lived right near Roughdale. So I guess that's how he got the bug. And can't remember the guy that promoted it. It was a quarter mile, and it's a nice track. As a matter of fact, for what it's worth, the last feature they had before they shut it down, I won it in a 55 Pontiac, blue number 68. I put my number on my cars because sometimes if we didn't have Dennis's car, we'd take my car. And Richie Brabson was my crew chief, a young kid at the time, and it was just he and I, and we won the feature, and I was kind of proud of that.
When did they move Motordrome up to its, well, it's
In
gone now, but
19, yeah, in 1972, Butch said that he was going to build a track there, and they bought the property where it is or where it was, and they cut out the half mile there, and another nice track, and when they first put it all together, it was very popular right at the beginning. And the first late model feature was one there by Herb Scott. He was in a Chevelle. That Chevelle eventually ended up being bought by the auction barn. And then Dom Massey was there in a 57 Chevy. And he won the feature. And anything other than that's kind of fuzzy because it was a long time ago.
so they moved up to the interstate. It's right off the interstate, of course.
Right.
Uh, then it went to asphalt around the time Jennerstown went, which is early 90s. Now, first of all, always a half mile from when it started up there where its last
Yes.
location was?
Yes.
Okay.
Always a half mile. And what was nice, the drivers could come off at turn 2 and just go right up this road, and it would take them right up into the pits. Sometimes they'd go up the road and weren't ready to go up the road, and they'd roll back down onto the track.
If I'm not mistaken, Jennerstown Motordrome did not go asphalt the same year. Who was first?
Jennerstown.
And Motordrome followed for what reason?
Well, uh, they wanted to lease slash buy the track from Butch Oval, and there were five investors. It was Danny White, Bob Arsenberger, Kenneth Kessler. Um, there was a guy, an electrician guy, and I don't know, there was five owners. And Danny White had two shares, so he was the fifth and sixth owner. So Arsenberger invites me to this meeting with all the big money people from Connellsville. And there was a bunch of them, and there was a lot of money there. And he just wanted me there to chip in if I had to. Well, they're talking about what they're going to do. And Neil Brown, the racer, his dad, Neil Brown Sr., had a bunch of money and he wanted to be one of the partners. So he said, I think we ought to lease out the concessions to someone else. I said, that's not a good idea. And he said, well, I'm never wrong. And I said, well, when you get home, mark it on your calendar, whatever this date is, I was wrong. And he got mad and he stormed out of there. And I said to Arsenberger, I said, I'm sorry. I didn't want to foul you up. He said, we didn't want him anyway. He's a hothead. So it's solved one of their problems. But,
We're going to wrap up this edition of Speeding Through History. Once again, we're joined with by Don Gamble. Don, we're going to pick up again. We're going to talk about more tracks as we go. As I said from the very beginning, we're going to go until either you or I are tired of doing this or we exhaust your memory, and that might take a little while. So we
well,
do have a couple of other guys that have mentioned they'd love to be on this show, and a lot of people have given me suggestions for other people to be on, but we're not going to do it till you're done, and you're not going to be done for a while by the sounds of things.
this might be the best thing that ever happened to short track racing in Western Pennsylvania and the surrounding areas. And I applaud you for all your hard work because once a week, like tonight, we have to take a half an hour to put this together. I appreciate what you're doing and I'm really enjoying it.
We hope everyone joins us once again next week, and we're going to do this again next Sunday night. Be on my YouTube channel and a whole bunch of Facebook pages. You can now comment on my YouTube channels. I had something that was wrong, and of course, my technical director, who you know pretty well, told me what to do. And now
Yes.
my YouTube channel, where you find it, where it's linked on some of the Facebook pages, you can leave some comments. Let me know what you think. Send me something through Facebook. Let me know if you enjoy what you're seeing. And we're going to continue this, Don. Until next week, thanks for being on Speeding Through History.
And thank you for having me.